A new era in aviation is upon us. Unmanned aerial vehicles afford the opportunity to shape, design, and manage machine intelligence, to explore the possibilities, push the envelope, let our imaginations soar.
Most of the history of aviation has been about making airplanes lighter or faster or more fuel efficient. The next 25 to 50 years is all about making airplanes smarter.
I can conceive of an unmanned aircraft that doesn't need a runway but can fly as fast as a fixed-wing aircraft, and yet is as simple mechanically. Big aircraft that could be developed by traditional aerospace companies, flexible enough to pick up an item from a cargo ship that's entering U.S. waters, deliver it, and never see a runway or the inside of a truck, and get there very, very fast.
I don't see it too far in the distant future that you'll have unmanned aerial ambulance service. Rescues from the battlefield. If you have the choice between keeping someone in the battlefield and keeping them in harm's way, or evacuating them rapidly with an autonomous vehicle, I think it would be very easy to make the case that you use the autonomous vehicle to do that.
Autonomous systems will develop to the point to where we are able to assign tasks and have the confidence that those tasks will occur. In fact, I think this is just another milestone in the march towards what eventually will be some level of artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence. We anticipate its arrival, and some say the day is here. While many experts believe good things will come from machine intelligence, there are still obstacles to overcome, regulations to put in place, and fears, both real and perceived, that need to be addressed.
We know after years of experience what it takes to create safe flight in the upper atmosphere. This new environment for these smaller machines, the proliferation of numbers way beyond the numbers we typically have for large aircraft today, I think all of those create angst for the community as well as the public and the issue of being safe.
One of the big issues that's facing us is fear of the unknown. There has to be a lot of development, there has to be a lot of research. And then once that happens, there has to be a lot of testing and the same rigor that's been applied to the air transportation system today. We get on an airplane and don't think twice about flying on that airplane. We know that we have a very high probability of a safe and uneventful flight.
The number one myth is that unmanned airplanes don't involve humans. You will always see humans intimately involved in these robotic airplanes. It's really all about the interaction of the humans and the machines together. It's a robotics revolution that's being driven into aviation.
It's a matter of laying out guidelines that basically instruct operators on how to operate. Much like with manned aircraft, it's not a matter of controlling pilots, it's a matter of basically these are the rules and we expect you to follow them. And then there's some sort of licensure, some sort of certification that the pilot or the operator is capable of not only having knowledge of the national airspace system, but having knowledge of how to move about in that system and do that safely.
2.6 million drones are expected to be out there by 2020, and that's a very different future than what we experience today. Current aviation has 70,000 operations in a day, 7,000 aircraft in the air during peak times. If you compare that with the demand for unmanned, then you would probably see a similar type of a ratio, making for an interesting mix of aviation as we move toward the future.
The demand for unmanned really comes from sort of multiple directions. On the commercial side and the military side, these unmanned systems perform functions that humans don't want to do, or sometimes can't do. Missions that are risky, missions that are dangerous, missions that are very dull. In fact, the term dull, dirty, and dangerous really came from the unmanned community. We see it today. The use of the UAV and doing things like inspecting oil rigs and pipelines is a task that can cost a lot more than it needs to, and the UAV can do it much more quickly.
The common myth is that unmanned airplanes will drive pilots out of business. I think nothing could be further from the truth. If you look at the statistics, in general aviation, for example, where the number of licensed pilots has been declining for 40 years, You look at the huge resurgence of interest since the FAA started allowing people to operate the smaller drones. The training is different. What it means to be a pilot evolves and changes, but it actually will open the field up to many, many more people and create a lot of new jobs in the process.
10 years ago, we were doing farming in a very traditional way with a grower on board. And then we started putting autonomous systems on the vehicles. Today, we can very precisely control the position of these vehicles, where essentially you can understand what's happening in the field on a plant row by plant row basis. That degree of precision has allowed us to double the amount of product we're getting out of a field. It's allowed us to feed a larger fraction of the world's population. It's proof that autonomy makes a huge difference in the marketplace.
The unmanned systems may help improve the safety, may help improve the operations, and reduce the barrier to acceptance of autonomous systems.
Once you realize that there are a number of these operations going to happen at the same time, same place, in the same airspace, then we really say that let's make sure that we have some way to organize them.
Whether on the ground or in the air, before we give these autonomous systems any tasks at all, one of the biggest hurdles might be trust. Trust that these autonomous systems will do what they are supposed to do and not cause any harm.
Where we haven't yet gone is to the mission level. And that's where autonomy is headed as the machines get more and more intelligence. The ability to be able to interpret what their sensors see, to understand what it is they're seeing, and to be able to infer what those things might be doing. It's what you and I do, but the machines aren't yet capable of.
I think the research that goes on in trying to figure out the safe integration of these systems in everyday life is fascinating.
What happened in 1956 is two aircraft collided over Grand Canyon, and that started the air transportation system and air traffic management system. 1958, when FAA was born, at the same time NASA was born. So what we are trying to do is get ahead of that and come up with a system that will safely enable large-scale drone operations at the low altitude.
This is a game-changing technology. The fact that Google and Facebook and Amazon have taken interest. When those types of companies start to pressure, really, the regulatory agencies to allow the deployment of these technologies, then this is serious business.
We've had 3 revolutions in aviation. The first was the Wright brothers that got us into the air. The second was the jet engine that got us speed. The third is going to be the development of autonomous systems, which is going to allow unmanned aviation to happen. And so if you want to be in on the ground floor of the next generation, this is the place to pay attention because it's setting the course for the future.
These machines will ultimately be capable of so much more than what they can do today, but they will have to pass many tests before society deems them safe to fly in our skies anytime soon.
What will our world look like when the demand for unmanned arrives in full force? And who will be impacted the most? The answer just might be all of us.
I don't think the FAA ever envisioned that the space below 500 feet would be quite so crowded as they envision it becoming today with these little machines.
Unmanned is inevitable. It's going to happen. And it's either going to happen chaotically or we're going to come up with a process that's reasonably organized.
People want to move fast with this technology, but there is the regulatory environment, and in particular the FAA when it comes to unmanned aircraft systems. And let's face it, the FAA has a history of almost impeccable safety.
Ultimately, they will find their way like most things do. They will have both a purpose, an application, and an economic price point that makes them the common sense solution for whatever the task is.
As a human being, we have a magnificent autonomous system. We can walk, we can go out in public and adapt. It's inevitable that unmanned systems will someday have those same capabilities.
we all will look at a different era of aviation and unmanned systems where they actually will be part of our day-to-day life.
We've got a long way to go. There are a lot of misconceptions about what can be done and what can't be done. So educating the public is a big part of this.
It's a matter of planning on how to use these technologies, how to get together both at the local level, the state and federal level to talk about and develop policies in which this technology can be integrated and used to the advantage and to the betterment of society.
It's not just about unmanned vehicles. It's about humans interacting with more and more capable robotic systems that are going to go into everything we do that flies.
The drone market is expected to soar to $4.8 billion by the end of this decade. In spite of this, many questions remain regarding the future of unmanned autonomous systems. How will they benefit humanity? What jobs will they take over or do better than we can? What will they look like, sound like, and where will they be allowed to fly? The answer to these questions and many more are crucial because autonomous unmanned aerial systems are here and will likely change the face of aviation and may also change the way we live our lives.